on, everybody? Welcome back to The Girls Wanna Know. My name's Fatima Talia, and I'm hanging out with
Alicia.
And this is our episode 4. Yes. Today we're going to be talking about lovely mental health in the Black community.
Yes.
But first, before we get into some heavy conversation, let's talk about how our weekends were.
How was your weekend? Why don't we start with you?
My weekend was fun. I had a good time.
What you do, girl?
Friday night I had a comedy show, and I saw some old friends, and we got a little tipsy and a little
Love that
high.
for you. Love
and
that.
we had a good time.
Y'all make sure y'all check out her comedy too.
It was a good
She's
time.
funny as fuck.
And then I watched the game over the weekend.
What game?
The LSU game. I love all the girls. It was very Black girl magic.
Wait, what's her name?
I
Is her name
enjoyed it.
Angel Reese?
Angel Reese is my boo.
I know of her
Mm-hmm.
because
follow
of
her
the
on
whole
TikTok.
situation, but I didn't know anything about. I didn't even know it was the finals. I'm like, yay, sports. I don't know.
Yeah. I like girls basketball. I used to play basketball myself,
Yeah.
so I started watching it. But I'm on and off with it. I haven't followed the whole season.
Okay.
But I follow her on TikTok. That's how I be knowing when the game gonna come on. But-
Okay. I got you.
Yeah. But that's what I did.
Okay, boo. What did I do this weekend? I went to brunch.
Ooh.
I did
Very grown up.
Yeah, I'm a brunch, lunch, dinner kind of girl. Like anytime
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm about to go out, I'm about to go eat some food. That's
Yeah.
literally my love
That's
language.
how life gets.
That's how it is. I'm about to eat some food and drink some champagne. Like
Yeah.
libations and sustenance.
Mhm.
This is where I live.
Sustenance? Yeah. No, that's how it is when you get older. You're like, I don't really do the club. I do
Yeah.
day party.
I want an event.
Yeah.
Take me to an event, a house party, a get together,
Yeah.
a kickback. This is where I live. Other than that, I
Mhm.
don't want to be. I'm not trying to do it. So yeah.
That's cute. That's
So
cute.
yeah, what we talking about today?
We're
What
going to
did we
talk
say?
about mental health. I
Okay.
think that's an important topic, especially in the time that we're living in.
Especially in the time that we're living in, and
Yeah.
especially in the Black community.
Yes.
I think we definitely need to do some work to destigmatize it because a lot of times we don't talk about it because we're ashamed or because we don't have the support that we need.
Mhm.
And truthfully, like there's so much healing in releasing the things that you're holding on to.
Mhm.
Like, yeah.
I think that a lot of times, like when it comes to mental health, a lot of Black people don't talk about it because our lives or our history has been raised on being strong and sucking things up.
Mhm.
So that is not a normal conversation you
Mhm.
have in like Black families, which I think needs to change because as we get older, I think all of us are realizing that we
Yeah.
do have anxiety and depression. And
Mhm.
like some people say, that's some white people shit. I hear people say, I'm like, no, that's called a feeling.
It's a feeling. These are
It's,
like
weird.
real human emotions. We all get them.
Yeah.
I think we also just are not given the space, not even within our culture, but just like in the world.
Mhm.
Black people's emotions, I think, are always downplayed or like we're being dramatic. Like
Mhm.
if you think about the maternal like death rate, like that crisis,
Mhm.
they don't listen to us when we say we're in pain.
I mean, speaking
they
of
don't give a
just
fuck.
this weekend, the LSU game,
Yeah.
like just her showing her
Yes.
passion for the game and her, aggression. That is, it was a two-way street.
It's not
It was
even
like,
aggression though. We just like out here like
well,
she's
wrong
a
word, not
kid,
aggression,
you
but
know?
like showing how
Yeah.
passionate she was about the game and, just doing what men do. To me,
Mhm.
I didn't really see anything that was that serious about it.
It's
I was
never
like,
that serious.
But I feel
it's
like
only that serious
it's
for
never that
us.
serious.
Yeah.
But I feel like anytime Black women do showcase any kind of emotion,
Mhm.
it's always taking so out of context,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so far. Like
it's angry Black woman or you're pill seeking or like if you
dramatic.
need assistance with pain, you're pill seeking, you're
Mhm.
dramatic, like you're never validated in how you feel. And so what ends up happening is you don't validate your own emotions because nobody on the outside is validating them.
Exactly.
So if y'all telling me that I'm overreacting, I must be overreacting.
Right.
And so we just internalize a lot of shit.
And then our own families sometimes
Mhm.
say that to you. I know I've experienced that. I think a lot for me, it was just I was raised by a strong Black woman. So it was just like that's my mentality. I
Mhm.
never really like stopped to be like, oh, you're tired or
Yeah.
you feel this way because you're doing too much or you're sweeping too much under the rug and just keep
Mhm.
pushing to the point where you're carrying a lot on your back and you're not even realizing it because of the way you were raised.
Yes.
And it's not that our parents don't care.
It's
I don't
not.
it's just that that's the way they were raised.
That's
It's like
why
a generation.
they never had the space. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a generational curse.
So I wrote some notes. I had to write them down. Okay. I think the first one I think that creates this issue of mental health in the Black community is the fear of sharing.
Mhm.
Just because, at least for me, where I grew up on the south side of Chicago, if you showcased any kind of weakness, it would be like, you a goofy or you a lame.
You used to cry when you get mad and people would drag you and joan on you for
talk
weeks.
About you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you stop showing emotion and you just start being, poker
Hard.
face.
Yeah.
But I think for a really long time, I didn't really realize I had anxiety and depression because I didn't know who to share it with. Like,
but who even was talking about that when we were kids? Like, that was not even a topic of conversation. The words depression and anxiety were so far removed from my lexicon. Like, it would never have been something that I would have known that I was dealing with, even though likely we've both been dealing with it for the majority of our lives, just because of the way that we were brought up.
I think I was born with it.
Yeah,
I think
you might have been.
I don't really know how that works scientifically, but I did hear from someone saying, like, if your mother suffered with it while she was pregnant with you,
it can run in a family,
or whatever. But I felt like as a kid, I always felt like kind of like sad or like up and down emotions, and I wasn't really sure where they were all coming from or who to share them with because, again, nobody in my family was really talking about it or showcasing it. They found other ways to deal with it, whether it was drinking a whole lot or partying it away.
Yeah.
This is what you learn, that behavior.
It is, and it's toxic. It is definitely toxic. Not the way to go. It actually pushes you further down into your like emotional hole. And I think for a lot of people, we're trying to break all these generational curses, but the depression and anxiety, this is a generational thing that we never really had the space to deal with. And then you look at how we respond to that with weed or with smoking or with drinking. And these are also things that we've seen our parents and our aunts and uncles deal with, and they rely too heavily on that.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly like in a space where you're assessing your relationship with the things that you use to cope with your anxiety and depression so that you don't perpetuate the things that you saw in your youth.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It's so exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a sustainable way to live.
No. And it will catch up with you.
It will absolutely. It actually caught up to me last year. So when I left my job, I had been through so many huge traumatic events, literally from the time I was a child until I took that time off work.
Yeah.
That things were just kind of starting to creep back in.
Oh, you will hit a wall if you grow up in an environment that you weren't able to, or you weren't able, like, to practicing how to heal your mental health. When you get as an adult, you're gonna hit a wall.
Yes.
Like, you are. Like, I've experienced that too, where you're like, okay, enough is, like, you reach your ceiling.
You really do.
Yeah.
I think people don't think of mental health in the same way that they think of physical health, but it really is the same thing.
Oh,
like, if you break your ankle and then don't really do anything. I'm going to use the ankle because I broke my ankle. But a long time ago. But if you break your ankle and you don't really do anything to rehab that ankle, it's going to heal a little bit on its own.
Right.
And you'll be able to use it again, but you might have like a little bit of a limp. Or you might not be able to run or jump or do whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But then if you sprain it and sprain it and sprain it and then re-break it.
Yeah.
Your ankle, you're going to be like not able to use your ankle anymore because you've put so much pressure on it and never actually taken the time to heal. I think the same thing happens with your brain.
Oh, absolutely.
You get trauma and then you just keep going, and then you get more trauma and you keep going. But the entire time the capacity of your brain to deal with this stuff is deteriorating. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is eventually you just hit a wall.
That's the same analogy I used to tell my homies. Like, bitch, I'm on the ropes.
Yes.
They whooping my ass.
Like, I'm hitting my ass.
I'm looking like Martin from that boxing episode. Bitch is going down. No, the
struggle is real.
The struggle is real. And I also think, like, for me, like, I didn't really think about therapy or anything until I moved away from my family, because when I did have mental health issues and I would bring it to my mom, she would be like, pray about it. Not that I wasn't a religious person and I didn't believe in a higher power. It was like, I'm feeling bad today. And I get it that you saying pray about it, but like, I need to talk this out like live in the world.
I just feel like, like I can pray about it, but I need like actual help and maybe like a pill.
It's like a spirit ain't gonna be able to,
like, I'm not gonna be able to like recite scripture and get rid of this.
I mean, a lot of people believe that, and I don't want to knock anyone's beliefs, because some people find comfort in that, and that's fine. But for me, it was like, this isn't enough. And the point that we're trying to make is sometimes that isn't enough. And in the Black community, we need to start saying, look into help. We don't ever advise each other to get therapists or to even join group therapy or anything. We just say, take a nap. Or
we be taking naps, baby.
We be taking naps and Tylenols.
I've gotten a lot of sleep this last week.
This is why we look so young.
I know, yeah. The skin is glowing because I've been sleeping my pain away.
Yeah, but that bothered me a lot growing up. Yeah. And then, you get into this mind where no one's listening to you. No one understands you. And then you hold on to that forever.
And then you're like in your head.
And then that
ruminating.
turns into...
Yeah.
And then that, a lot of times I think people don't really understand that, like, you can have depression really young. And that's why some kids act out the way they do. And no one asks them why. Like, I definitely was one of those kids that they would call a problem child. Like, I would be like bad in school.
And nobody's looking at like, okay, but this is abnormal
what is the
behavior,
reason?
So let's do some digging. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for example, growing up for me, I was pretty violent. A bitch was ready to fight at any moment. But no one thought that, where did I get that from?
Yeah.
Like,
but I think
nobody was like, oh, maybe we turning up and she's seeing it. And that's she taking it to school. Instead, they was like, you on punishment.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
And nobody ever addresses the root of the issue.
Problem. Yes.
And I think especially with kids, there's a tendency to just like reduce it to, oh, you're spoiled or you're selfish or you're this or you're that, as opposed to like actually examining where the behavior is coming from. Because the shit comes from somewhere.
You tell your mom that you having a bad time at school, she be like, well, you got a roof over your head.
Exactly.
And we got food.
And it's completely invalidating to your experience.
Black family's number one.
Because your feelings are valid.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I constantly say this to people. Your feelings are valid. And it is of paramount importance for all of us to get into a space where we're validating ourselves.
Yeah.
Where we're saying, I need help. I'm not okay. And we're reaching out to people, or we're like removing ourselves from situations that are like exacerbating our pain. Because if they're not validating you and you're not validating you, then you're just continuing a cycle of mental degradation.
Yep.
And you won't be able to like live your life. You can't live a full life in that space.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And like, I think a lot of times for, like we were saying earlier, especially for Black women, there's a lot put on our backs really young. Like, we don't,
the adultification of Black girls. Yeah.
Especially because, I'm not saying everybody, but most of us grew up in single family homes, like where it's just your mother. So you got to learn how to help out at like 5. So now you're not even being a 5-year-old. You know how to drive.
You
like,
definitely.
you can balance a checkbook
you
at
can.
6.
I was definitely cooking dinner at 9.
Okay. Like, I think I was like driving at like 10. I think they taught me how to drive at like really young. I can't remember, but I definitely drove to the corner store.
Okay.
In my neighborhood. Like, I had a lot of responsibility early because my mother, when she got divorced, like, it was just her.
Yeah.
And she couldn't afford babysitters all the time. So I turned into the babysitter, where it was just like, okay, you're the oldest.
You got to do what you got to do. Yeah.
You got to look after your brother and don't open the door for nobody.
Right.
And you know how to make a hot dog. So,
girl, that don't open the door for nobody. I remember I opened the door one time for the rent, or the lady who did like the rent office. She was like one of the people who ran the rent office. Baby, my mama was like, I told you.
But that's the kind of trouble. But then when you have that kind of responsibility so young, and then you grow up and then you still in that mindset of taking care of things, you get tired.
You do.
Like, that ties into so many things when it comes to Black women and femininity. It's a reason why, we have this big thing you hear everybody talking about online, being like, oh, I want my soft girl season.
Yeah, we can't be soft.
We've never been able to.
When the fuck are we supposed to be soft?
Because you have to not open the door and cook a hot dog.
Right.
So,
like, when?
Like,
how are we supposed to attain softness when our entire lives have been hard? Like, let me know if you can figure out how you attain that, and I'll get right on it. But I think the expectation of us is to be these like simple, wonderful creatures who are just there for people's pleasure and amusement.
Oh man.
And to like be peace for people, as opposed to like actually experiencing our emotions and being able to talk about it.
Right.
Like,
we're programmed
yeah.
to feel like you have to be strong all the time.
Yeah.
There's this stigma. What is it called? The strong Black woman thing. I hate it.
Hate it.
But
I don't want to be strong no more. I'm exhausted. I can't be strong.
Oh God.
Like, I literally can't do it. I'm not going to.
I'm not going to do it.
I will cry.
No, we're programmed.
We at the point I'm just going to cry. I can't handle it no more.
To think that. And even for me now that I like have experienced therapy and I'm self-aware, like, I feel like when I have conversations with my mom, I'm like, I'm still at this age, not allowed sometimes to be emotional. Like when I say how I feel or if I'm upset about something, it's like, you need to pick it up.
Yeah.
You acting too, and you like, dang, like how much
you gotta pray about
do
it.
you need me to hold on? Like if I'm, just imagine if I'm holding on to this much and I'm this strong, I'm crazy at this point.
I don't know if you're
And
crazy.
but I'm just saying, like, if you don't release it in some way or try to heal it in some way, you are crazy. And there's a lot of, that's why
you
dating,
go crazy. Yeah.
be wow.
Yeah.
Like, I know that because like you meet guys now and you be like, oh, he got what? He dressed nice and he a nice guy and everything's great. And then you get down to the root of it and you like, oh, he ain't even touched, you know? But a lot of us don't. They don't. A lot of my friends, a lot of my friends don't have therapists. I was the first person to do it, and that inspired a lot of my friends to get into it.
I'm trying to think. I feel like a couple of I know a good number of people who have therapists.
When was the first time you decided
that I needed help?
Yeah, or did you want it to do it?
Well, actually, it was in 2016. This was right around the time when Alton Sterling and Philando Castile got killed. And I had already been going through like a crisis of faith. But I was really just having like an existential crisis at that point because I'm looking at this video of Philando Castile and I kept wondering, like, where is God?
Yeah.
Like, when you look at the state of Black people in the world, not even in America, but in the world, when you look at how we're treated and how we have constantly been oppressed and disenfranchised and fucking murdered for no reason, you really have to, like, wonder, where is God? Yeah. And I was thinking, like, these people that are killing us, who are claiming to be Christian, cannot be praying to the same God that I'm praying to, because if they are, my God's not listening.
Bro.
And so that
was a big part of like literally why it was so hard for me when my mother would say, when I was really having an anxiety attack or having any kind of emotional breakdown, and she would say, pray about it. I'm like,
I don't think he's
I tried
listening.
that and homie didn't like you. It messes with you more.
It does. And so what ends up happening is, for me, I just kind of got to the point where I couldn't believe, like, I was raised super Christian and I relied heavily on that throughout my life, where I would pray about things and I would read the scripture and all of that stuff. And it can provide like a salve because you have hope. But if you lose your faith in God, you lose hope. Because God is hope.
Yeah.
And so if I don't have that anymore, I'm literally it's like despair. And I remember I was driving home from work and I had been just really torn up about this because I could not get any peace about it. And I couldn't get any kind of like understanding about what this was supposed to mean for my life if God is not really, he doesn't exist in the way that I've thought that he exists.
Did. Yes.
And I was sitting in front of the 24-hour fitness on Wilshire. It's like a 24-hour LA fitness. And I had a thought pop into my head that was like, it would be easier if you killed yourself. And I was like, oh.
That was
But at the time, I think it was an intrusive thought because I didn't feel like I wanted to kill myself. But it was one of those things where my brain was so overloaded. And now that I know that I have OCD, this was probably the beginning of like me being symptomatic for OCD. And thinking like, it would probably be easier if you just killed yourself. I went home and I feel like I made an appointment with a therapist maybe like a couple days later because I had never had a suicidal ideation before in my life.
Yeah.
And now suddenly I'm questioning God and I'm questioning my faith and I've really lost hope in humanity and life in general.
Yeah.
And here are these suicidal ideations. It's just too much.
Right.
And so, I had to go to a therapist because the alternative felt bleak. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was smart that you made that decision for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like you were just like, okay, this thought that's very responsible.
I mean, it was
some people
terrifying.
Don't think that way at all. You know, they make a move.
Well, and so the thing is this, I completely understand how it can go from an ideation to an action because it is draining. It still happens to me sometimes. And the good thing is like, because I understand that it's OCD now, I can just be like, oh, I don't want to do that. And I do this thing called acknowledge and release, where I'm just like, ugh, no, I don't want to do it, and I release it.
Yeah.
But for a person who doesn't understand what's happening to them, when you're constantly getting fed, it's like a fail-safe, basically, where your brain is overwhelmed, and it's like, this is a good way to not be overwhelmed anymore. That's what your brain is trying to tell you.
Okay.
But the problem is, if your brain is constantly telling you that and you don't want to do that, but every time you feel bad, that's what it's telling you, I can understand how people are acting on it, because it's such a terrifying thing, but also the low that you feel is just so low.
I tried to explain that to
it's so low.
Like a few of my friends of like, because when you hear someone being depressed and then people give you normal advice, they don't know what to say. They just always like, oh, it's gonna be okay, or just do this, or they get whatever advice they give you.
Yeah,
I think maybe. Because I therapy for me was two different things. Like I really didn't understand what it was. I was definitely still trying to keep going. I think the first time I took therapy, it was a boyfriend that I had at the time was like, you should do this. And I was kind of like looking at him kind of like, okay. Because in my mind, I'm like, bro, I'm not crazy. Like, because that's the way you're raised. You
to think that people in therapy are like unwell.
When he said that to me, I was like insulted. Offended. I was like, bro, no. But, I had someone was murdered in my family, and I had nightmares, and I was like really, like I kept waking up like in a freak, like going crazy. And he was like, you should get therapy about it. And when I did, the therapist was looking at me. Her eyes were like mad big.
Yeah,
like,
that's what my therapist was doing. How the fuck you been surviving?
Hanging around this long. And she was like, this story is bananas.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, well, I was going to keep it pushing. But homie was like, I should go. She was like, no, this is a smart idea.
This is definitely something you should have let out a long time ago. But I made the
mistake that when I felt better, I stopped
doing it. Yeah.
I was like, I can't, I'm good. I got to work on Wednesdays now. I think that's exactly what I told her.
You like, I'm good. Bye, girl.
And I left, but then I kept going. I was going through a lot still. Like I still hadn't identified that I had anxiety and depression. To me, it was just all temporary things. So when I felt good again, I was like, I'm fine. There was still a lot going on in my life that was still beating me down, and I was still trying to push through, but it was like carrying bags. It just kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier.
And you literally are dragging things because you cannot pick it up. Yeah.
So I was close to a breakdown, and then me and the person that I was with that told me to go to therapy, we had a breakup. We were engaged, and that was my cap. I actually went 51-50 on that because I was like, turned. Like at that point, I didn't give a fuck who knew I was trying to kill myself. Like I was fine with it.
I think that's the other reason why people don't want to talk about it though. Nobody want to tell you that they're having suicidal ideations and then you 51-50 them.
Well, I didn't necessarily, here's a T. They set me up.
Wait, tell people what a 51-50 is.
51-50 is basically if you tell a nurse or a doctor that you are having thoughts of killing yourself, they are going to lock you up for 72 hours and medicate you until you feel like that's not a choice.
Yeah.
And like, to me, it wasn't that I was like really planning to kill myself. It wasn't like I had an idea and I was like, I came in with cuts. That's how I felt,
yeah.
Like it was just a random like thought. It was just a thought that I was like, this is so painful. And the way that you were explaining it, for me, it was just like, I'd never felt that down before. It was almost like, this is crazy that I'm saying this, but I understood at that point why people became cutters. Because it was so dark, the place that I was in. I was like, I need to do anything to distract how horrible I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. And then so I was smoking weed a lot and I was like partying a lot. I was trying to just shake it off when it was only adding to it. And like, I think I had reached a day, I was really sad. And then like, I talked to my therapist and she was just like, oh, you can get on anxiety meds. And I was like, fine. I went to the emergency room to try to get them. And I thought I could tell the nurse the truth about how I was feeling because I thought I was just going to get the meds and head off to work. And she was just like kind of playing the game with me.
She was like, okay, I'll be right back.
Right, basically. And then they just start taking all my shit slowly.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, but I mean, the tripped out part about it is like you get locked up and you realize I'm fine because everyone in there is turned.
Everybody is like much more turned
than like, but that, and just being in that space still, my family wasn't really like, oh, there's really something wrong here. They just was like, oh, that's wild what happened. I'm glad you got out.
Yeah.
And that was it.
I think also they just don't have the capacity to deal with it.
Yeah.
So nobody knows what to say when you say, oh, I had to go to the hospital for 3 days because I felt suicide. Nobody knows how to handle that.
Yeah.
Especially not people who have not necessarily historically been in touch with their emotions.
Yeah.
Like, I find that is the really difficult thing about talking to people about what you're going through is if they're not like in tune
or
with their emotions, or they've never experienced
it,
they're so uncomfortable and so like unable to give you any kind of support at all because it just breaks their brain to see or hear what you're going through.
My cousin came to visit me while I was in there, and like, first of all, I'm a comic, so everything's bananas. I can't. So the entire experience, they never forgot me. They actually came to a bunch of my shows after that.
Oh my God, I love it.
Because I was really silly the whole time I was in there because I wasn't planning on like staying.
You probably gave the residents joy.
Oh yeah, literally. Everybody was like,
they loved you.
They were sad. Like all the they weren't stable in there, but they definitely were like, you don't belong here.
Yeah,
like, but
one of these things is not like the other. Like,
so and I did turn that into a major joke. Please check that out on YouTube. It's on True TV. I turned it into a major joke. But I mean, at the time when my cousin came to see me, and like he wasn't even like, oh no.
Yeah.
As soon as he walked in, he was like laughing.
Yeah.
He was like, Tima, what is this?
Yeah.
And I was like, bro, I didn't know they was gonna lock me up, but like I'm really like not having a good time. I'm like really hurting, and like everybody in the family keeps just saying, keep going, keep pushing. No one's saying, okay, maybe you need a break.
Yeah.
It was like I had to give myself that break.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And at that time, it was like, when we had that breakup, I'm living in LA, I'm a struggling artist. This person also he ghosted me. Try having a fiance that just disappears.
Oh my God.
So that is pretty much why it was a mental breakdown for me. Because it was like,
that is the worst.
And it wasn't like I knew anything was wrong. Like we didn't have any fight.
So you just keep going over everything in your head. Like when did he know what happened?
Here's the thing. Just like we going into this conversation, my ex-fiance also had anxiety and depression and wasn't sure how to handle himself with all of that. So when he made that choice, that was like him making a mental health choice because he wasn't sure if we should be married or what really wasn't even that.
I don't really feel like that. No.
It was more of like he didn't know what he wanted out of life. And,
that's fine. But I think but he ghosted me. Like, he left, engaged. Yeah, you definitely.
And I never ever spoke to this person ever again. Like,
oh my God.
And so that was a really mental, because beyond just the relationship, we were like really good friends. So like when someone just dips and doesn't tell you anything, you're like, what? You're trying to find an answer?
Yes.
So
you're ruminating.
Yeah, the whole
constantly. Yeah.
And then I have to pick up the pieces. So imagine somebody like doing that to you, and then now you're like, okay, I have to pay all this rent by myself.
Gotta go to work.
I gotta do all these things by myself, and I still gotta keep life rolling without understanding. And then it got way worse because at this point, his phone was connected to our computer, and I was seeing all these text messages from other women and all these other things, and all these, I could see his bank statements from like strip clubs. It was just awful. Like the universe was not playing with me around that time. And then like later when we did talk, he was like, oh, just didn't call you because I got into a relationship with someone else. That was his voicemail.
So I want to just take a moment to say that you can make a mental health decision for yourself and still be considerate of someone else's feelings.
Oh, but not if you're fully messed up. I mean, now that I'm healed and I understand that situation.
You giving him some grace.
Because I understand that he wasn't the one, and I'm very grateful that you left. Thank you.
You know what? You're right.
It wasn't for me.
You're right.
But I feel like the maturity too. Yeah. Like he wasn't in a mature space to really understand himself to do that. And it's true. Even though that was hard, and I'm very grateful that I didn't kill myself or anything like that, I became like a phenomenal woman outside of that. So thank you, sir.
Yes. The glow up be real.
The glow up was great.
Yeah. I mean,
you had to be drugged through the mud.
You do. Okay. You definitely gotta have
3 or 4 braids missing, baby.
Shit gotta get rocked, but then you come out looking like Halle Berry.
Yes. But I mean, I feel like it, being self-aware is something that a lot of us don't know. And like, it takes a lot to get to that.
Yeah.
But I became self-aware through that situation. But that's when I knew I had anxiety and depression, and it was something that could be triggered easily. I had a lot of situations that I didn't know that I had from the past when it comes to therapy. I also went through anger management for a whole year.
So that's another thing I feel like people don't really talk about is they will get like something like anger management. I feel like this is something that everybody, you get anger management, any kind of like emotional like construction that you get where it's somebody telling you, okay, this is how you manage this. These are things we should be disseminating to the masses because so many people are overwhelmed by what they feel and so unsure of how to articulate their emotions or how to even like process them themselves. Like, why is this kind of stuff not more readily available?
That's a good question.
You know what I mean? Like, I therapy's not readily available. Anger management is not. And the thing is, so many people need anger management because so many people have been decimated by capitalism and by terrible parents and by awful men. Like, there's just so many things that people are battling. We need help.
Yeah.
And there's just no resources.
I think it should be something that's offered in jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen the office. What was the one where they kept moving a homeboy's desk?
Office Space?
Office Space. Like, that kind of stuff goes on in real life and it can trigger people.
Yes.
Like, everybody's different too. That's the thing. You know, for me, I've learned now, like, not to take things personally because you never know what somebody's going through. But I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
I know that now because I'm learning now, like, I could be having the worst time ever, and this is how I respond to things. And people may not even take the time to ask me why I'm responding to things like that. So they're just going to put a judgment stamp on you quick. Yeah. So,
and they in a space where they're just saying, oh, this behavior is not something that I want to deal with. And so they're removing themselves.
Right. But I do feel like, you know, you're right. I don't know why these things are more accessible because they need to be. Like,
they need to be.
I remember when I was in anger management, half of the people in there was corporate.
Yeah.
like the whole session was everybody being like going off on somebody at work. Or like one lady was the sweetest woman I've ever met. She was this wonderful Black woman that like snapped and whooped somebody outside of her job. Like she had got into it and she felt really bad about like what had happened and she didn't want to react that way, but she had reached her cap.
And I think the thing is people react to things differently. So whereas her reaction might be to beat somebody's ass, somebody else's reaction is full meltdown, I can't get out of the bed. Yeah. However you respond to your trauma, like it has to be a wake-up call for you to say, okay, you know what? The way I just handled that was not the way that I should have handled it. Yeah. And so I need to figure out some more like healthy coping mechanisms. But we don't have the resources to do that. And so we just be beating the shit out of people.
I mean, I think for me, I learned like after that situation, I had a therapist, but then for me, it took a long time to find a good one.
It takes forever, yeah.
It takes a while for you to find the one that feels right, that fits, you know, that you want to work with. But then what I think most people need to understand, because now it's like insurance and paying for it, what other things can you be doing to keep you in a balanced state of mind? What I learned for me was meditation, working out, yoga. Yeah. Yoga was probably the number one thing that got me together better than a therapist. Because after that situation happened and, you know, even when I got out, you know, and I was like supposedly better, I still had anxiety attacks. Yeah. Like where I'd be overworked from work and then have a thought about the relationship failure.
And you'd be triggered.
And then I would freak out. And like, I remember like I have like every time, like I remember one job I had where they were like, are you okay? You go to the bathroom a lot. I was just like crying my eyes out in the middle of the shift.
Do I know, like, I know that feeling.
And I would be in there like breathing, freaking out.
And then you got to wipe your eyes and try to like salvage your makeup.
As a cocktail server, I was like serving tables and my manager used to be like, we see you going to the bathroom like bananas on the camera. Like, you like, good? You got a bladder issue? And I didn't want to share that I was like having
Of course you don't want to share that,
attack. So I'd be like, oh, I'm on this medication that makes me pee a lot. And they're like, sure. But I would
It's LA. I feel like they thought you had like a habit of some sort.
Oh, 1,000%.
They definitely thought you was in there on that white horse.
Yeah. We all have that
Jan.
problem.
Sure, Jan.
Yeah. Because he had that problem. He was like, oh yeah, me too. I'll be peeing a lot too.
Right.
And I was like, no, but I just remember very, very closely like how hard it was to just keep going through life. And I was having that problem because you have to.
You got to.
Like, you got to pay the bills.
Well,
but like,
we can't rest.
That's the part that sucks.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you truly need it. Like I was a absolute mess.
A wreck, yeah.
And like a mess at work. Like it was to the point where I remember now I think about it a lot. When like one of the bartenders were like, they thought I had, what is the disease where you can't look anyone in the eye? Oh, it's called something. But he was just like, oh, for like a long time, like you couldn't look at any of us. And I couldn't because I was just, my feelings were too on my sleeve. Like I had a hard time.
And sometimes you look at somebody and they might look at you like they care, like a micro bit and you just gonna start crying.
Yeah.
Like you really will just unravel for no reason. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and even for me, like in the comedy community, nobody really said anything to me about it, but like just people's reactions of like, not even reactions. I would say once pandemic was over and I came back out, a lot of people, I could notice that people knew that something was wrong and how they never said anything because how everybody would be like, oh, you're so different now. And then that's when, in my new self, I was like, well, then why y'all niggas didn't say nothing?
Yeah.
And try to help me.
Because people be uncomfortable.
And they were just like, well, and I'm just like, well, if you was talking trash behind me saying I drink so much,
yeah,
no one said anything to me. You just said that behind my back.
People
but now
are uncomfortable, yeah.
You know, but that too, like this too. Make sure when you going through a dark time that you surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to just have a group of y'all just crying. And
everybody just going to be piling on their trauma.
Together.
I want to go back to what you said though about healthy coping mechanisms. So you said yoga.
Yoga was
meditation.
The one for me because it was a form of meditation.
Yeah. And then what was the other one you said?
I worked out a lot. Like I was to the gym.
So something else that I think is, y'all know I'm a huge proponent of meditation. I meditate multiple times a day. Sometimes like it's just really such a great way to recenter. And a lot of people will say they can't do meditation. It doesn't work for them.
In the beginning, it did not work.
I'm not gonna lie. It's not that it's not working. I feel like meditation is like a muscle where you gotta build it up. And it took me a couple months before it stopped or started working. I think another thing that is really helpful though with anxiety and depression and obsessive compulsive disorder is being hyper aware of the things that trigger you. So I read something that said that people who have anxiety tend to watch the same shows all the time. They listen to the same music. They wear the same clothes. Like we just do things very similarly all the time because we are aware of what our triggers are and we know these things are not going to trigger us.
Right.
So something that I figured out was that music was contributing to me feeling therapy. Down. Yeah. But
it made you feel down.
Yes, because you have to, I feel like music is not meant to be heard. Some music anyway. Some music is meant to be felt.
I have a full-on depressed playlist.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes when it comes on now, I'm like, oh, I remember who I was at this time.
Yeah, so
now, thank you,
sir. Now you feel like that. Yeah. But I think when you're in the thick of it and you're listening to a bunch of R&B and you're listening to a bunch of shit that makes you think about your trauma, you're just kind of sinking further into that hole.
See, I didn't do that.
Yeah, so I definitely am a person who feels music. Like if an artist is going through something when they write a song and they write it well, I'm gonna feel what they was going through.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm gonna feel what I'm going through that's relatable to them.
Love Yours by J. Cole was the #1 song I would cry to.
I don't think I know that song.
Love Yours?
Okay, I gotta listen to that song.
It was like this was right around the time I was going through it. I had like a lot of like songs that I did. Love Yours. There was a song with Brandy and Chris Brown that I would bawl to. I can't remember the name of it right now. But it was a lot of stuff that was relatable, like you said.
You gotta really like be intentional though about what you allow into your brain. So for me, because I understand how much and the thing is I'm not even like sitting up in my room about nobody at this point. Right. But I do find that if I listen to R&B for too long, my brain just starts to I can't do it. Like I just get sad. And it's rhythm and blues. Like, of course you're sad listening to people sing about unrequited love and being cheated on and like, you know what I mean?
No,
like
I know what you mean.
So for me, I find that I can listen to it for a few, like maybe a day, but then I got to listen to Afro beats or I got to listen to classical or like ambient tones.
Yeah.
I have to listen to something else so that I can reset my brain.
Yeah.
And I don't think people are aware of that. Like your triggers are all of the things that you're doing in your life that feel like I always do this. Some of that stuff is making it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to pay attention to that. It's almost a good idea to keep a feelings journal. So you can say
journaling is really great.
Journaling in general is really great.
I started that very young in my youth. I used to journal a lot.
I had journals,
But then I would read them later as I got older and they were all very, very sad and very dramatic.
Oh yeah.
But that was something that I don't know. I think it just maturity with your
when you read your old journals, you just really be like, dang,
right?
Shit was
rough.
Yeah. When I read my old journals, I'd be like, wow.
Yeah, mine too. You'd be like, dang, bro, was you happy ever?
We made it though.
I mean, we definitely did
that shit.
Okay. I also feel like, I don't know what I wish I could help somebody with what what triggered in me to make me be so self-aware to where I understood myself, because that's something is I feel like a lot of my friends ask me and I always have a hard time explaining. And I want to give that to people because I feel like there was this moment where I knew I came from a hard life. I knew what I was going on was hard, but then there was this part of me that was like, you're going to change that and you're going to change your mindset from being negative, and you're going to find the good things that are happening in your life, and you're going to pay attention to who's coming into your life and what are you going to learn from them that's going to reflect to you to make you a better person. Because I felt like in my time of depression, you are the feeling you have, you're going to attract kind of. A lot of my friends that were in my life when I was going through that, like in my super dark space, were kind of going through that too.
Because misery loves company.
But it was different types of it.
Yeah.
And so for me, the weird part about it was like how every time I would heal a certain part of myself, I would shed off those people. Like it kept happening year after year. And that was giving me anxiety because I was like, I can't keep friends. So just like, so how to, like, for me, I'm like, I don't know how to like save people from themselves of being like, everything can't be a trigger. Because when you've been hurt and you're still in a process of healing, that is going to be something that forever.
Yeah.
Forever. You have to know that it's never going to go away, that it's going to be consistent practice.
Well, so I don't think the triggers will always stay. I
definitely still have them in certain areas of things.
So
they're getting better, but
they get better. I definitely think that for anxiety and depression, like you said, it's a constant thing where you have to work at it. But I do think the reaction to the triggers can be lessened over time.
Oh, they are. They
like
will.
You definitely get to a space where you think about something and you like, damn, I used to be really like fucked up about that. And you're fine about it.
Yeah.
And so that is obviously the goal. But I think what happens in the process is you really do have to remember that just because you feel better that this one day, you can't stop working.
That's what I'm saying. It's a practice.
It's really
because
a practice.
Lot of times people are watching these podcasts or they're reading these books for the cure.
Yeah.
When you're like,
there's
depression
no one
and anxiety,
thing.
There's no cure.
There's literally no one thing. And the thing
is just self-awareness.
So
period.
When I found out that I had OCD, I got diagnosed a couple months ago, and she was like, we can give you a pill for that. And I just don't want to take a pill. Like I feel like at this point, I tried a bunch of pills, like antidepressants and stuff, and I feel like I had to go through like 5 or 6 before I found one.
Now that's interesting that you say that, because I grew up and my mother knew that I had anxiety and depression and she would not allow it. And I feel like that happened for a long time
this is when
me.
As a grown up, I went through 5 or 6 pills.
Oh, now I'll be like, give me the drugs.
No.
Hand it over. Because I grew up with it. Like, no, when I was
couldn't
growing
take anything?
up, my mother was fully aware that at like 12 that I was like not
struggling. Yeah.
She used to say this to me: don't go in your room and try to kill yourself because that's whack.
What?
We laugh about that now, but she would say that.
But they be like, when
and
you think about some of the things your parents said to you.
See, it wasn't that she was being mean. This is what her
she wasn't.
mother
That's
was
just
like.
How they be. They
that's
just
how her upbringing was.
Rough around the edges.
And so they be like that with you. And it's just like, that's why now all my friends be holding their kids tight and be trying to love on them real good.
And so the funny thing is my mom will say wild shit to me and I'll be like, Mom, that you can't say stuff like that. Yeah. She'll be like, y'all so sensitive. Ugh, lady.
Speaking of, if you don't want to be on drugs, or I won't call it drugs, you don't want to be on medication for anxiety and depression, I've discovered this new vitamin that I feel like is major. The ashwagandha. What is it?
It's great.
Baby,
ashwagandha is great.
Go to work and just not care.
It is.
People be talking, you be like, okay.
I think ashwagandha is great. I also just think if you need to take a pill, take a pill. Like, I am very much of the mindset that you have to do what is going to work for you to get better.
You definitely should.
And so for me, I absolutely take a pill.
Don't live in a bad time.
I'm not embarrassed about that. Like,
life is too short.
My brain is chemically imbalanced sometimes and I need help. And so I take a pill.
Yep.
But I also just think that if you find that one path that you're on to try to get to like a better space is not working, it's okay to divert the path, but don't give up on the project.
Yeah, like, I think creating I would call it what I used to have. It was called my anxiety and depression schedule. I knew I was like triggered by certain things, especially like nothing against, my family and my mother, but I knew that like she didn't understand certain things about me. So I knew I had to like not say I wasn't going to talk to her, but I knew certain things I couldn't and what I could, and I managed my time a certain kind of way with that.
You have to be selective about who you let into your like space.
And I had like a sheet that I would go by.
Yeah.
I would wake up and I'd be like, okay, and for me, meditation was hard. Some people can do it, but I had to learn from like this app called Headspace. It trains you. So I would tell myself like at 6 a.m., I'm doing 5-minute Headspace. And then after that, I was either going to go to yoga or I was going to go to the gym.
Yeah.
And then I would do something that made me feel good. And like, then I would make sure that whatever was happening at work, I wouldn't do too much of, or I would tell myself like, if you're tired, just be tired.
Yeah.
Don't try to do the most. Like if you know you're really, 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 really going through it, I would suggest creating a schedule.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
It is also a form of validating your feelings, because this is you saying, you know what, I know that I'm not okay. So here are the things that I'm going to do to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
And you can also tack on therapy to that. And you can also reach out to your friends. And if you're one of those people that does not have like a supportive circle around you, the internet is great.
The internet is amazing.
Twitter is amazing.
TikTok.
Reddit is amazing. There are so many people who will show up for you from the internet.
From the people, you know what? I will say my mom did tell me this. She used to tell me, she was like, you know what? I'm going to tell you like my mother told me. She was like, sometimes it's better to talk to a stranger than somebody you know.
But this is why therapy is so great. Is because the shit that I would say to my therapist, I would never say to anybody else.
Yeah.
Like there are some pockets of my brain that I will just have to take to the grave, but she knows about them.
Yeah.
Because some shit that you go through is it's so much that you don't want to put the trauma on somebody else to know that you went through this. And so you just don't talk about it. And that was my experience for a long time. And then once it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, I found a therapist. But I think it's just really important at this point, the whole self-validation thing, and just like honoring your process and being kind to yourself, giving yourself grace, because this is just a very hard thing.
It is a hard thing.
It's not going to get easier. Like,
I mean, also situations. Let's talk about being broke.
Situational depression, poverty depression is real. Like,
I feel like, especially nowadays with the way the economy is going and the job market, and you know, a lot of my friends are going through financial hardships, and that is causing a lot of sadness. And when you in that situation, you can't afford yoga, or you can't afford the gym, or you can't afford to go hang out with your friends. I feel like that is tough. That's when you end up being like, all right, well, let's grab a bottle.
You know what? And I feel like what's really frustrating about that, just about the poverty conversation in general, is that you hear people all the time talk about how they pulled themselves up from their bootstraps. But when you talk about pulling yourself up from your bootstraps, you don't really consider, or the people who say that are not considering all the people along the way who took time to nurture them. Because nobody is out here getting out the mud on their own. You didn't go from the bottom to the top by
definitely
yourself.
Definitely not. No.
But what ends up happening a lot of times is that people really do not have anyone. So you're going through this dark, dark, dark place, and there's literally no one for you to turn to. And so you do turn to the bottle, or you turn to weed or some other unhealthy coping mechanism, and then that piles on and makes everything worse.
You know, for me, I had a really weird story with that, because I didn't really hit my ceiling until I got to LA, and I was like away from my family and away from my really close friends.
Yeah, that's when I hit mine.
So what ended up happening to me was people took advantage of me. I had a lot of people that saw me in this dark space and didn't have money, and they would, you know, offer to pay for things for me out of what they thought I would do for them later, or who they thought I was going to become, which was, you know, really weird. But I would have that. I would have people, you know, oh, let's go out for drinks, I'll pay for it, or
And it's so they can have something over your head.
Yeah. And
so
I had that
owe them
a lot.
Yeah.
And it was strange to me because it, you know, of course I believed in myself and I knew I was going to be, you know, something great, but I didn't think people was going to be early.
You don't want to be like bartering your success, for a drink. Like, that's crazy.
Man, I had a lot of friends that would do a lot of things for me, and they did it for the benefit of themselves, but I didn't find out until later. And that was also like adding to my anxiety because I was running all the time. I was like, okay, I can't sleep on this couch anymore, or I can't be with this person because they're, they're not doing it because they care. They're doing it because they're like, well, what you gonna give me later?
You know what is so unfortunate that I feel like women have to be cognizant of that, because I remember I met this guy on a dating app and we went on a date and I was like, oh, it's not gonna work. And I told him it was not gonna work. And he was in the industry that I wanted. He's like a food blogger. Um, and he kind of tried to, well, we can just be friends. I can help you do XYZ. And for me, because I understand, or just because of my experiences with men doing things for you, doing things for you, I just was like, no, I don't feel comfortable meeting somebody on a dating app and then
they just do shit for
we
you.
just gonna be friends and you're gonna like do stuff for me because you're in the industry that I want to be in. I don't trust that.
Yeah.
Because history tells me, and my own personal experiences tell me, that when people do stuff for you, specifically men, they do expect a return on that investment. And I'm just not willing to return anything. Yeah. So he was very annoyed with me because I was just kind of like, no, I don't want to be friends.
I mean,
like,
personally, I feel like that's human nature. I mean, men usually do it more, but a lot of my experiences when people would like help me and do things for me were women. It would be like, I had like, for example, I would be going through it and you know, when you're going through it, you cling to people. I had a friend that I didn't know really, really well, but we knew each other well. And like, she kind of was going through something similar and we cling to each other actually. But she turned out to be like this narcissistic, controlling person because of the fact that she was helping me with my car when it broke down, or if she, there was a point where I was really, really poor while I was living in LA and I lived in a 1-bedroom and she helped me build walls in my apartment so that I could have a second.
So she felt like you were indebted to her.
Basically. So she would basically try to control my life. Like she would tell me, I don't want you to date this guy. And like, if I catch you with him, we can't be friends. Like she would say these things to me and I'd be looking at her. Literally. Yes. And then
I feel like my brain just short-circuited.
I went through some weird things like that. And then like, she would help me get roommates after she helped me like build the walls, and all the roommates would almost make me feel like in my gut, she was getting them to watch me.
Now like, she got CCTV for the house.
Basically. And like, I remember there was our friendship breakup was really dumb because it was just like, I was being evicted and she was just like acting like I was throwing her friend out. Like she had got one of her friends to live with me. And like, when I was like, I have to leave and like, this is it. Your friend doesn't have any money. We're done. She freaked out on me. Like I was just ruining her project that she built in my apartment. And that's when I was like, oh my God, like,
you never your cared
vulnerability
about me. You never
that
cared
you shared. About me. And here's the thing, but that's because I was still in a dark place and I wasn't self-aware of what I was involving myself with, which ended up happening more later. Like when I left that space, I moved into another space with another person that was like, I'll help you. And they were like, because I kept on telling them like, oh, I don't want to be roommates with anybody. I think I need to either figure it out or go home or something. And she was like, oh, don't worry about it. I understand. I've been through this. I'll pay the security deposit. All you got to do is come in and pay the rent. Psycho. As soon as I moved in, it was like, now she felt like she brought my friendship. So like every time I left the house, she'd bust out her room like, where you going? Can I come? Ooh. It was just like, I couldn't have an individual life. It was bizarre. And like the more and more that I noticed it was like, oh, they invested in you for their purpose and made it look like it was like, okay, now you really gotta.
And it's hard I feel like once you have that experience a couple times, it becomes very difficult to like
trust anybody.
Do friendship. Like,
I had that really bad for a long time in this town. Like to the point where everybody I would meet, I'd be like, side motherfucking eye.
Damn, like, that is the worst.
For real. Like it wasn't till LG moved here, I started coming out again.
You have a good friend,
Because I was really on some old, like when I was leaving that last situation and moving out of that during pandemic, like I knew it wasn't not the vibe I could see. And it was like, at first I was like, well, is it me? But everybody that would come visit me and be like, bro, that girl needs you. She's investing in you. Yeah. You gotta escape. It's looking real. It's looking real wild.
You have had some rough experiences.
I've had some rough experiences.
I feel like I've definitely been very privileged in that situation. Like when I'm going through it, somebody gonna pull up. My sister gonna pull up. My bestie's gonna pull up. Like somebody's gonna pull up. And
we didn't have like
saved me.
I didn't have that. It was so weird.
I know.
At the time of my life, like it's changed. But at the time of my life, my family didn't even have money to like visit.
So and
I couldn't go home.
I feel like not having the friends and like the support system though, it's like support poverty.
Oh yeah.
Where you don't have, not only do you not have the money, but I also don't have the people. And so like, what am I doing to get through this? There's literally no way for you. I mean, of course there are anomalies and people who just like really do get it out the mud. But if I don't have people supporting me and I don't have the money to support myself. Like, what am I supposed to do? And this is the place that I think a lot of people find themselves in. And I think every time I get to a really dark space, I come out of it being a little bit more compassionate because I think I understand.
Because you understand.
I understand. Yeah. And I feel like I'm always trying to be compassionate to people, but sometimes perspective really makes you empathize in a way that you couldn't have before.
Exactly.
So,
I know I do.
Yeah, I really be trying not to be judgmental. Like, everybody's just going through so much.
Yeah.
Like, you really gotta give everybody so much grace.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard.
Be careful too. I don't know how to say, because I mean, this is what I want to give people, because some people, like for me, it was like I was going through all that and all those things happened to me. And then I was creating this schedule, right? But I still had all these things happening to me at the same time. How do you
how do
imagine
you manage
being suicidal?
Yeah.
You don't have money. You have to depend on these people that are not good for you. You're trying to make a way. Like, the best advice I can give people, because at that time in my life, like, I still have moments where I'm like, dang, that's wild that you got through that. I literally drowned myself in my work in comedy. I found I drowned myself in what I loved, because it was like there was really no other way for me. It was just like I would and even there was a point where I was homeless. Like, I had to live with this guy, and he was on drugs. He was doing hella coke, and we were dating, but he was a horrible man. He was doing cocaine, and I was trying to do comedy and trying to find an apartment. I was working 3 restaurants at the same time.
Yeah.
On top of that, I was trying to start my career in content. So when you have all that piled up on you, my advice to people is you just gotta really try to separate yourself. That alone time might suck, but you're gonna need to do it. And you're gonna have to, because I had a lot of that. I had a lot of shit and for me, it was all at one time.
I think what people are doing though, I think we all are doing the same thing. We're all just disassociating.
But in the moment, some people
that's what I'm saying.
Snap and they just kill themselves or something.
It's like a thing where we talked about how it builds up, and then you hit a wall. A lot of us, in order to get through the day, are disassociating from our feelings. So I was doing this therapy before I left my therapist called EMDR. You got to go through, you do light therapy basically, where you remember something like a traumatic memory, you follow the light.
Oh, you were telling me about this,
and it helps you kind of detach from the emotional aspect of it. Like, you just process through the memory. And I was going through a memory and I just started unraveling. Like, I was really, it's probably the hardest I've cried in I don't know how long. And we got done with the light. Like, the light goes off and then she asks you to okay, take a deep breath. How do you feel? And I stopped crying and she was like, how are you feeling? And I was like, I'm fine. And she was like, what are you thinking about? And I was like, nothing. And she was like, there's nothing going on in your head. I was like, I could not find a thought in my head. Like, everything left. And she was like, I think you're disassociating. So we're going to bring you back to the room.
Right.
But I think we're all doing a form of disassociating on a daily basis. But the thing is,
when you start telling me that, I'm I'd have been like,
yeah, but you can't.
What you mean?
you can't process that level of emotion on a day-to-day basis. I can't process homelessness and poverty and a failed relationship and some of us are grieving. Like, you cannot process all of those things at the same time. Your brain literally will just say, okay, I'm going to focus on these couple things that I have to do right in this little window. And the stuff that's happening over here and over there, I can't deal with it right now. Yeah. It just stops thinking about it until it can't stop thinking about it.
This is when I say God will come in. Okay. Now, if you don't believe in anything in higher power, I will say that those times were bananas for me. And it always seemed to work out in the weirdest ways. Cause it was just, and in a way of where sometimes I had to accept my surroundings and be around people that weren't great. And I knew I wasn't in a safe environment, but I had to do what I had to do to get through it. But I mean, I think cause when most people really know my story, they be like, damn girl, that shit was a lot. I can't believe you here with it. Yeah. And you're doing it. But I would say pandemic saved my life. Cause I really was in a
You might be the
space.
only one who feels like that.
Nah, I feel like, like once I was evicted from the space with the situation with the other friends, I had to move in with another bad friend. And in between not moving with that other bad friend, I had to live with a crazy ex-boy. But I had some blessings in between it. Like the guy that I was dating that wasn't great, his roommate was really sweet to me. And he gave me the keys to his room and allowed me to sleep in there.
Nice.
For the time period until I moved in with this other person. And then like I lived there. And then I had ended up dating someone that was really compassionate about that. And I had spent more time at their place. So there were moments where the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, came through with those moments where our parents be like, just pray about it. I was praying about it, but it was just like a lot was going on. But like that part of my life, it was still really hard. I definitely was not coping well. I was definitely drinking more wine than ever and smoking weed all day.
I've definitely been over smoking.
But I was getting through it. But pandemic, us sitting down and the world stopping for a minute and the hustle stopping for a minute was the rest I needed.
Actually, I feel like that makes sense because now that I think about it, while we were at home, while the world was stopped, I really had a moment to think about what I wanted to do with my life.
Honey.
And we had to go back to work after 3 months of being off. And I just remember my anxiety being through the roof because I knew this is not what I want to be doing. I cannot handle being in retail in the middle of a pandemic. It's too much. And here we are almost 3 years later and I've quit this job and I'm actually pursuing what I want to do. So I guess pandemic did save my life in a little
which brings me to, I wish there was some kind of program, and there has to be, for people that are going through mental health to take a break. Because I swear to God, I was going through so much shit, y'all, to the point where when the world stopped, because I had to hustle, I didn't have shit. So I remember being so broke. People would not believe this. I got booked to go do a headlining spot in DC. They flew me there. They put me in a hotel, but a bitch had $20.
Damn.
In her pocket.
That's when you got to get a lot of ramen. Was it a microwave in the room?
It was.
Okay.
So I brought food with me.
Okay.
A bitch packed sandwiches in her luggage. But
you
no
what
one
you
would
gotta
even
do.
believe that.
Yeah.
So I begged the booker to pay me that night because I knew how was I going to get around? Because other people will offer me shows, and what people don't know about stand-up, people don't know this, a lot of the times you got to get your own way to stuff.
Yeah.
They ain't paying for everything. So having $20 in DC.
DC already one of the most expensive places in the country.
Talk about
down
baby,
very bad.
Down real
very,
bad.
very bad.
And I'm getting there on that Friday with $20 and someone offers me a spot. And I'm like, okay, how can I get there? I took an Uber pool. My account gets overdrawn. I'm stuck in the middle. I'm stuck in the middle of DC, but I ended up making friends and people got me back to my hotel, and I ended up doing my show on that Saturday, and I ended up getting paid and the whole thing. But damn, what was I trying to say? Fuck.
It just works out, I feel like.
Oh, I was gonna say,
was that what we were talking about?
The blessings come in the weirdest way were worked out. But I wish that there was some kind of fun, because yes, that's what I was trying to say.
Oh, there is. Okay, so I can talk about that.
Because I feel like what ended up happening with me was something that probably couldn't have happened if the world was still going.
So
I was carrying this fucked up energy and trying to work and trying to make money and trying to push through that I couldn't attract what I needed until I was rested.
So there is something that you can do. You can take mental health leave. It's in the state of California. You absolutely can. You can in other states. I don't know what the ins and out of it
because it's necessary.
It's very necessary, though. It's what I did. I took a year and just got very deep into therapy and into journaling and meditation and working out and just really investing very deeply in myself. The thing about that is you have that time off, and if you're really looking to heal, it's hard work. You really come out of it. Yeah. You come out of it a completely different person. I think you said this on the last episode. Do people be like, you look so much better? Yeah. People tell me all the time, you're glowing. Yes. Because I've finally rid myself of the toxicity that I've been carrying around for 30 years.
Yep.
So it definitely is an option. You basically would just call, I think, the Hartford in California and say, hey, I need to take time off. And then you go see your doctor and have them fill out paperwork.
Okay, so that's good.
It's literally a way to do this.
Because I feel like that was the
it's literally a way to do this. And I think if more people knew, you have to obviously have like a job that pays into disability insurance.
Right.
But if you work full time, you likely have a job that's paying into disability insurance. This is an option. And people are powering through so much trauma, and you get to the end of your life and you really just exhausted.
Oh,
like
man.
you can't live out your golden years,
right?
Because you've gone through so much at the beginning. Like you just laying down,
my life
mindlessly flicking the television
changed for the absolute insane better. Like
Take
I could
the time.
never imagine any of those great things happening the way life
I
was
honestly
going.
I couldn't I would never have gotten to where I am now if I had just powered through and kept working. Man. I don't think I would.
The creativity that came out of me, the opportunities that came out of like the break.
Yeah.
I became, by the time we hit like 2020, literally 2020, because I think pandemic, 2020
yeah.
happened? Okay. Yeah. I shot a special in 2020.
Yeah.
My brain was,
you was on. You was tapped in.
I was tapped in, baby. It was just like, I needed that though. I needed to not be running the streets and working 40 jobs while still healing.
Yeah.
You know, it was hard and it was stressful and I didn't have anybody and it was like nothing, and everything changed though. Like everything changed for like, even for my family, like during pandemic, like my mother was able to visit, my brother was in a different space. And also I never was able to go home the whole time I was going through this. I never saw my family for Christmas, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I was spending all of those things by myself.
I've definitely experienced that.
Eating mac and cheese in a room.
Yeah. You cannot go home because it's too expensive.
My cat would talk a lot being like, nigga, we are broke. We are down.
You splitting boiled chicken with the cat.
Like I would take him to the vet and they would be like, oh, he has like anxiety.
They're like, he needs a therapist.
Basically, I gave him to my mom and she's like, oh, he's pretty healthy now. Like he lives a balanced life, but like people feel your energy. Mm-hmm. Like your pets know when you going through
let me start crying. My dog be he be in my face, like on top of me. Yes.
They be trying to like be like, no, it's okay.
It's okay. Therapeutic for sure, to the core.
So definitely look into that, y'all. Like if you are having a heavy moment, look into some kind of like
leave.
Look into leave. It's so necessary.
It will change your life, but I also just think, again, I just want to say, validate your own emotions. Like,
and your health will start crashing. There was something bizarre going on with me with my health during that time that stopped all of a sudden now. I haven't had a kidney issue in like 2-3 years. At that time, I kept passing out at work. Mm-hmm. I worked at this hotel and like I kept passing out, and then I ended up going to the doctor and they kept on being like, you have a UTI that's turning into this. And it was like, are you drinking enough water? And I'm like, probably not. I'm just drinking wine.
I'm actually just drinking vodka.
I'm actually drunk now. but I was sick all the time. Like it was just a lot.
It definitely manifests physically. That is 100% true. That you will get stress pimples. I remember getting, at my lowest point, I was sicker than I've ever been. And I went to Walgreens to pick up my prescription. And the lady who was behind the counter, I like told her my name, and then I was so exhausted I had to like kneel down at the counter, just kind of like squat and just like wait for her to get the prescription. And she looked over and she was like, do you want me to call somebody for you?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's okay.
This was during pandemic?
No, this was a couple years ago. Like I was just so...
Because I had to go to the hospital during pandemic for my kidneys, and that's when I knew COVID was real.
But that's how it manifests.
How it would look like
ground
zero.
It was really
all
rough
caution taped off, and they was like, "You got COVID." I was like, "No, my kidney just failed again." And they was like, "No." Everybody had on like
you gotta have like surgical masks.
It was bananas.
No, but it does manifest physically, and it's really important, I think, to understand that the way that a muscle will deteriorate if you don't take care of it, if you don't heal it from breaking, your brain will do the same thing. If your brain breaks, it's not going to be good for anybody.
Nah, it's not. It's definitely not going to be good.
You really got to invest.
You can't do nothing.
You can't do nothing.
Right anyway.
No.
I think are we running out of time?
We're
running out of time. I was going to say though, to close this out, I think if anything, if I can give advice for anybody about, especially what I've gone through, it's been like hell of a journey. I should be telling somebody. I think people should really understand that everybody is going through something, so you're not different. So don't ever feel like you are weird or you're not enough or something's wrong with me, because like literally everybody is, and they just probably not sharing or they go through it differently.
That's why we want to destigmatize it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so don't be hard on yourself if you're not at your best, because you can't be all the time. Mm-hmm. Like that's not human.
But also, like, it's not a thing where somebody can just tell you, just be positive. If you're depressed or anxious, you are chemically imbalanced, babe.
Like, I hate
it's fine. It's like
Just
like having like a kidney failure.
Right.
Nobody gonna tell a person with kidney failure, just buck up and you'll feel better.
I had it when I was at home. My family was like, you're fine.
You're fine.
I was like dying.
But no, like if you're really going through it, it's okay.
Fingertips was frozen.
Exactly.
I was like, oh no.
Like if you need medication to feel better, take the medication.
Do what you gotta do to be happy.
Don't be ashamed of what you have to do to make yourself feel better. The you that is in here is depending on you way more than the people that are out there. You need you.
Come on,
you
Alicia.
Need you.
Come on, Alicia.
So take care of yourself.
Take care of you.
Yeah,
it's important.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this episode was helpful, everybody, and please leave comments below of anything you think we should talk about or how you feel about what we talked about today.
Yes.
My name's Fatima Talia.
I am Alicia, and
this is The Girls Want to Know.
Bye, boo.
Subscribe.
Subscribe and like and comment.
Yes. And subscribe to our TikTok. We are trying to grow our page.
Yes. Bye, boos.